Video here. I don't know how much time I have because I'm waiting for a car uh, garage to call me, so I may have to leave sort of at any moment. But hope you're all doing good. Sorry, my hair's a mess here. Jeez, it's good stuff. I gotta get a haircut. Boo. So, I wanted to do a little video on some discussion I was having last night on X. It was with specific people, but we'll try to keep it in generalities. Um, that's up to you. It doesn't matter. You can go to my X feed and see who exactly I was talking to. Not really important. But, anyways, great to be here. We'll give a minute or so for people to come in. I was asked by someone to show any evidence I had of when I continually talk about May 30th, May 31st, 2020, that there was a left wing insurrection at the White House. And a person was asking for evidence of it. Now, this is funny from the get go because you could see the other people that were responding to the tweet or post or whatever they're called now, was saying, "We've never seen evidence of that. We don't believe it. We don't believe this happened. We don't believe it. Don't believe it." It's easy to find the evidence. I remember I was actually briefly live streamed that night. It was a series of left wing attacks that we'd seen over and over and over. Riots after the George Floyd riots. We knew that there was limited amounts of violence that occurred May 29th, 2020, outside the White House, and that was occurring in Washington, D.C. So it was expected because we understand how violent the left is, and we're gaslit into believing that's not the case. But we saw that over and over during riots with the Ferguson riots, the Mike Brown riots. We saw it with when Trump was, inaugurated. We saw it with the George Floyd riots. So we knew that these things were commonplace. Now, as I've talked about this over and over, I'll tell you what I've said in varying degrees, depending on if I'm mentioning it in passing, if I'm making a post on X, etc. The reason that the insurrection of May 30th, 2020 wasn't successful was because there was adequate preparation and adequate security, unlike January 6th. Because January 6th, for a litany of reasons, some being that there was an intentional lack of security, others being that there was not many examples of right wingers rioting, so they aren't as prepared as when left wingers come to town because they know they will riot. But it was only through the grace that we had adequate preparation on May 30th when these left wingers rioted and attacked guards outside the White House attempting to get into the White House that this was able to be prevented. And so it's not as if their intentions were more noble or more pure, quite the opposite. And so that had been my argument from the get go. Notice I didn't say that they broke into the White House, that they breached the White House. I never said any of that. I said they attacked the White House and they were stopped before they could get in. That was what the argument was. So people ask for proof of this. Now, the first thing to say is, isn't it odd that the media didn't cover this and the Democrats didn't cover this? Barely a blip. They had like 1 or 2 days of coverage. That was it. No massive FBI task force, not calls to see who orchestrated all of the weapons that these people had and how they got there and who funded it and checking their bank records and hotel records and seeing if they ever bought firearms, et cetera, et cetera. None of that, like that occurred on January 6th. Very small amount of people arrested. In fact, according to the Secret Service's website, which I since found since last night, they said they arrested one person. This is despite you can see the actual footage of security guards, Secret Service, etc., being attacked, including with lethal weapons such as fire. There were reports live from video that a guard station was burned down. We'll talk about that specifically. Fox News had reported that Molotov cocktails had been deployed, that there was flammable liquid that was placed in cars, and it seemed that there was stashing in cars of people to be able to get their hands on, I guess, various forms of weapon or to light cars on fire, etc. None of it taken seriously. In fact, Tom Cotton wrote an op-ed the next day suggesting National Guard should be deployed at some of these riots. And of course, the Democrats called that fascistic and said that was terrible and that that op-ed needed to be removed. That was the Democrats' response to this. Joe Biden, a week later, would make fun of Trump for having to be moved to a bunker, told him to go back to his bunker, as would other personalities. It was trending on Twitter. That was the narrative of the left. Haha, Trump's bunker boy. That's what occurred. Those are the things that I've talked about. And so it was John's right. It was Pisco last night that asked me. He just politely was like, "Hey, can you send me evidence of this?" I said, "Sure." And then you see other people saying, "Oh, that didn't happen. There's no evidence of it." So I'm able to easily provide the evidence. And what do you think? What do you think occurred? Did they say, "Oh, okay, thanks"? They said, just like when Destiny asked me in that Spaces, he said, "Rob, what do you think would happen if you showed me evidence that met my definition?" I said, "You would try to find meaningless distinctions to get out of calling it an insurrection." "No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't." What do you think exactly what they attempted to do is? They were like, "Yeah, this evidence doesn't exist." And then I provide it, and they're like, "Well, it doesn't count." The narrative from Pisco is, and this is a narrative that will be shared by people on the left, that this doesn't qualify as an insurrection because to them, an insurrection has to be two or more people that were attempting to get into a governmental building. Oh, I'm going to have to end here soon. I'm sorry. Maybe we'll talk more about this later. But it looks like the garage people are here. Pisco's argument is unless they physically got over or were on the White House fence, the physical fence, it doesn't matter that they were breaching barriers a mere feet outside the White House fence. And then a perimeter was set up the next night and they attacked Secret Service agents with fire, with weapons, and broke down barricades going towards the White House. He says, nope. Maybe that's not what they were doing. Maybe they weren't trying to get into the White House. This is laughable. He would never have the same standard when it came to the rights and things like January 6th. Imagine if there was a perimeter set outside January 6th and it wasn't breached, like 100 feet outside the Capitol. Would he say, oh, okay, no insurrection? Of course not. So I do have to get going, unfortunately, but it's just laughable. Go to my X feed to be able to see this. Maybe we'll talk more about this later. Thanks so much, everyone. As always, have a good one.